How much does the fear of what others think about you affect your life? That is the subject of today's Queer Money follow-up series, episode number 63, covering Queer Money podcast episode number 63, on which we talked with Robert Carter. The episode was titled, Robert Carter Talks Men in Tights and Pointe Shoes, Pointe being Pointe, because Robert was a member of the, I'm going to botch this up.
Le Trockadero de Monte Carlo.
Well, there's a longer name to it, too. Anyway, so we're covering our interview with Robert. And what was interesting about his story was similar to some other topics we covered recently, other subjects we covered recently. Robert was a gay black boy growing up in this case, Charleston, South Carolina. And his mom somehow introduced him to ballet, dance and ballet.
I think it was very interesting. Robert's mother actually was a cotton picker in the fields. Not a slave, but she was a cotton picker in the fields, and she had a limited education and a limited access to money. He said that when she was younger, she used to look at the sky and watch the planes fly over, and he
specifically said the Pan Am planes
right,
too.
Right. Said that she used to fantasize and dream about herself being able to take off and fly somewhere. And so she made a very strong purpose in her life to make sure that her kids were exposed to things that she never had access to. And part of that was the arts.
Right. And so one day, a dance instructor saw Robert, and I forget exactly where, but saw Robert and thought he would be great for dance. And so he asked Robert's mother, if he can start teaching him dance. And she said, sure, that'd be great. And for whatever reason, Robert gravitated towards ballet. And being a young gay black boy in Charleston, South Carolina, especially 30-some years ago, 50-some years ago, that wasn't, all those stars didn't really, weren't the perfect alignment, right? Because his father wanted him to play sports. His father wanted him to be a man's man. His father didn't have a father himself. His father passed away when he was a young boy. So he was hoping to finally be the father to a boy that he had always, the archetype of what a boy is.
And Robert is the only son. He's the youngest of three children, only boy, and his dad wanted to be the father for his son, and there just wasn't the connection to the things that his father wanted to share with him, Robert was interested in other things.
Exactly. So a common, the dominant theme that David and I got out of this particular episode, listening to Robert's story again, was just how aligned Robert was with what it was that he wanted to do, regardless of what the outside pressures might be. He didn't care. I'm sure he struggled to some extent, to some degree, when he was younger about what others thought about him. But he was so committed to what mattered most to him, what inspired him, and he was most inspired to ballet. And even in the world of ballet, he gravitated toward aspects of ballet that weren't traditional for boys or men to gravitate towards. And one of those is Pointe ballet. That's actually something that women ballerinas do, right? And back in the day, 30, 40 years ago, it was almost unheard of. People were aghast that a boy would even be taught this because it was just so outside of the norm. But Robert, fortunately, had dance instructors who were fine with introducing him to various aspects of ballet, regardless of whether or not it was socially acceptable. And this kind of opened up doors of opportunity for Robert. And eventually he became a part of the Trockadero troupe, which most of the men who portray themselves as women, as ballerinas, end up doing pointe dancing.
Yeah. I think there were a lot of interesting aspects to Robert's story. One was his progression through ballet or dance and ballet and what he was learning. But I think the other thing was his commitment to actually getting out there and getting into what he was passionate about or he really enjoyed doing. And the fact that I think that there are a lot of young people today that think that you go to high school, you go to college, you get out of college, and you instantly get a job that is the perfect job, and you're just going to be happy for the rest of your life. And Robert's example was another one, similar to Emil Welbecken, similar to Patrick Riley, and others that we have had on the Queer Money podcast, of how they had to make the opportunities. Right? They had to ask the questions. They had to go out there and find it themselves. And that there was this extra layer of work. And sometimes, Robert gave the example of how he wanted to be in ballet, he wanted to be in dance, but at a certain point, his parents were like, "We don't have any more money to keep you in New York." He was living in New York. His parents were in South Carolina, and they were like, "We don't have any more money. You either come home or you find a job." So he got a job working at night in a youth hostel, and he would work at night and go to auditions during the day because he was passionate about what he wanted to do. He was spending his whole day, literally, auditioning, doing his practice, and then working so that he could get what he wants. It's not this instant success, instant career. I'm going to be great. I'm going to do my 9 to 5 and make $100,000 a year. Oftentimes success comes with needing to go out there and grind a little bit. And it's nice to see the levels of success we're finding with a variety of queer people who are actually doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it was great because he had the fortitude to stick to what it was that he wanted to do, despite, what his father might have thought of what he should do at a younger age, or what society suggested that he should do as an adult. Because Robert talked about, similar to our story and many gay men's stories, most of us have come from unwelcoming backgrounds. And then when we finally reach adulthood, we do whatever it takes to fit in, even to the point of conforming. And we see that conformity so much in society today. It's even becoming exacerbated because of things like Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, where we're seeing like, okay, well, this is what the definition of a success is, or this is what this is the archetype of what it is to be an A-list gay man or an A-list lesbian. We have to fit into these narrow definitions.
I think, what's very interesting to me is I think that TikTok is the perfect example of this, right? Go onto your feed and what do you see? You see almost everyone doing the exact same thing, right? It's these series of dance moves or these pointing at the words, and that's what's successful, right? Anybody who veers beyond that doesn't seem to have a whole lot of success, right? And I think the same thing sadly is happening in the queer community, especially for gay men, is that we so want to be liked. We so want to be, we're craving that approval that we end up copying what we see other people are doing to get that approval, and then we all end up looking alike.
Right. And we're also afraid of what others think of us, right? Because if we dare to do something different, then we open ourselves up to judgment. But would you rather be yourself and be different, or would you rather conform and just look like everybody else? And the quote that hit home for both David and me from this particular episode is when Robert said, "We're not responsible for the viewpoints of others and what they project on us." And to me, I think this is very powerful, because I think most of us, especially gay men, grow up in communities and homes where all these beliefs about what it is to be a boy, a proper boy, and what it means to be a proper man are projected on us. And we struggle our whole lives to break free and say, no, you must accept me for who I am. And then we run to the city and we conform and do exactly what our new community says we're supposed to do. Right. And so we're really running from one conformity to another, and we're not necessarily being ourselves. I mean, there's more to us as humans than being gay or lesbian or trans. There's so much more to us. But it seems like we rebel against anything that won't accept this one particular aspect of our lives, and then we run to whatever will accept, whatever we can that we can gravitate towards, or that will accept us, as long as we conform to whatever their standards are.
Right. And I think that, when Robert said this, when he said we're not responsible for the viewpoints of others and what they project on us, oftentimes I think that for many of us, we automatically think of people outside of the queer community, right? Don't project on me you don't make me fit into your norm or your little box. But we actually find that that's happening a lot within the queer community too. Right. A lot of people within the gay community, we do that to each other, right? If you don't dress a certain way or your body doesn't look a certain way, there's all this judgment, right, that goes along with that. And what's so interesting is we spend an inordinate amount of energy and time in our own heads. We get stuck in our own heads worrying what other people think. We were watching something the other day on YouTube about this whole thing about how much time and energy people waste thinking about what other people think. And it was kind of it's interesting because they basically said, no one gives a fuck about you. We're all too worried about what else is going on in our own lives, right? But we all spend all this time in our heads so concerned with, oh, they're not going to like me because my hair doesn't look perfect, or oh no, I have a stain on my pants. They're not going to like me, or I made a mistake. I said the wrong thing, right? More often than not, people completely miss all of that. It's just not there. But then and I think I remember hearing this statistic, that 80% of the things that we worry about that other people think about us, or circumstances that we create in our own heads, never ever transpire. Right. Never ever. No one's thinking this. No one's worried about this. But what are we doing ourselves?
Right. Well, I think every one of us is so concerned about what everybody else is thinking about every aspect of our life. We forget that everyone else is wholly consumed with what everybody else thinks about their life.
Right.
Everybody else is actually thinking about themselves. Nobody cares about you. But to this particular video that we watched, the point was, well, that can seem kind of cold that nobody else is thinking about us, right? Because it's like, oh, well, what's my purpose? Why am I even here? But there's also an element of relief from that, because we get hung up on because we said the wrong thing at the office, or when we answered the phone, our voice was higher than we normally is, and we have no explanation why, right? Whatever we're afraid of at that particular given moment. And it's kind of a relief to know that people don't actually really care.
Right.
They're not actually remembering that. And so getting hung up on that is actually, all it is really doing is just creating anxiety for yourself, but it's self-induced anxiety. And part of it is we need to get over what we've seen talked about on several platforms, is this approval addiction.
Yeah.
We're all so desperate to seek approval, so desperately seeking approval, and we're seeking it from all sorts of directions. And that's probably most evident today with, how many likes did I get on this particular post, and how many followers have been added to my Instagram feed. We're kind of, and if we don't get that immediate gratification, or the type of gratification that society says we should pursue today, then we start, we kind of internalize that, and that exacerbates the anxiety.
Yeah. And I think one of the big concerns with this, this is the Queer Money podcast and Queer Money follow-ups. One of the big concerns with this is that when we have this approval addiction, when we have this desire to please everyone else at all costs, then oftentimes we can put ourselves into a financial situation where we're spending money to try to get the approval of others, and then we end up causing ourselves damage, right? We hurt our finances, which we know that when you struggle financially, there is a correlation with how much you have mental health issues, right? You struggle with the stress and the worry. All of that works against your being able to be mentally healthy, right? That's all contributes to a difficult mental state. And so we are sometimes spending so much energy and time and money trying to get everyone else to like us that we're actually hurting ourselves, which means they may not even like us because we're hurting ourselves, right?
You're not being the best version of yourself.
Exactly.
You're not bringing your whole self to the table anytime you interact with them. All they're seeing is a facade of you.
Right.
And I think to some degree, people can tell that there's not authenticity there. And so they're not able to, whether they consciously, or they know it consciously or not, they're not able to connect with you in a way they might prefer to, or that might engender them more to you to actually have a real friendship or a real partnership. But we never actually let that facade down. And so people only ever see the curated version of ourselves, much like Facebook and Instagram.
Right. Well, and I think that really that's kind of the way it's becoming, right? Not only is our visible life on Facebook and Instagram becoming this polished subset of our real life, then we kind of do the same thing when we go out in public and we're around our friends. When we're around people, we only show the best portions. And I'm not saying that you want to go out there and say, spill everything, but if we're only putting on a facade to show this perfect image of ourselves, just imagine what happens when our friends or you get into a relationship and that person finds out that you're not the true perfect version that you've been projecting, right? And again, I'm not saying, go out there and tell them all of your...
Don't fart on your first date.
Right. Or the skeletons in your closet kind of thing right away. But I think it's important for us to not be as concerned with this facade.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. The point is to stop wasting our time and energy and money, especially on what others think of us. That'll literally get us nowhere, and nowhere nearly as far as we could go if we were authentically ourselves.
Yeah. I'll give you an example of this, and I think I've shared this before on the Queer Money follow-ups. I used to do this a lot. I would go into the bar, and I would hang around with friends, but I would intentionally offer to buy people rounds of drinks, shots, and things like that because I wasn't confident enough in myself that they wanted to be my friend. I felt like I had to buy them. And what was interesting is I was thinking about doing something here at the local LGBT center, and I was starting to feel that going on in my head again, that if we put on an event for this group of people, the only way we could lure them in was to provide food. That we don't have true value to provide with what we wanted to do as volunteers. We need to actually serve them or attract them with something else. Well, that again is that all that approval anxiety kicking up in me that I'm not truly valuable or worthy myself or the message that I have. And I think that we can get stuck in that, and it can get kind of rear its ugly head from time to time.
Yeah, so for sure, be yourself. It's cheaper. So thank you for joining us for another Queer Money follow-up. Here is your Queer Money follow-up takeaway from this episode. Go to debtfreeguys.com/happy and download your free copy of the 5 building blocks of a happy gay life. And then let us know in the comments section below if you've ever, how much does fear of what others think of you affect your life? And do you think it has any effect? And I'm curious too if it has any effect, what you think, on your finances.
Yeah. And I would venture to say for most people, that's a rhetorical question, right? We know that it has an impact, but
We're there.
Yep.
And we're not immune to it even today.
Right.
So then join us tomorrow for episode 64 of the Queer Money follow-up series, where we cover episode 64 of the Queer Money podcast, titled Going Deep, on social media with Pink Banana. So many double entendres there. I don't even know what to do with myself.
Exactly.
And lastly but not leastly, please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and then set notifications on this channel so you don't miss future follow-ups and or any other videos that we happen to upload, because we've got nothing else going on. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.